Before we start writing any code, you need to understand this area here. This is called the device monitor and configuration area. So here you have your inputs, and then assigned to each input is either a motor or a sensor of some type. Now, when I built this, I started with the motors. First thing I placed in was a motor. Well, it automatically assigned that motor to input number 1. The second thing I put in was another motor. It assigned that automatically to number 2. Then I placed the bumper, then the distance sensor. So let's say I were to place another motor. If I go down here to devices and I click on that, there's the motor, and you can see it automatically assigned it to input number 5. Again, if I were to put in this gyro sensor, it automatically assigned it to number 6. So depending on how I build determines which inputs and which motors or sensors are assigned to those inputs. So I'm going to delete this now, and you can see it disappears, and delete that. If I click on the settings icon, the little gear next to the motors and the sensors, it will tell me more about that motor and then its motor polarity, which we'll talk about in a later lesson. And then here's the bumper switch. It tells me, yep, that bumper switch is selected. And the distance sensor is selected. So it automatically knows what are motors and what are distance sensors and bumpers and so forth. The reason this is important, when you do start writing your code, depending on how you built your robot, will determine which inputs are assigned to which motors and sensors. So if you write a program like this one that is referencing the bumper switch, which is on number 3, in your program it might be on number 4. So as you're going through the lessons, you'll have to pay close attention to which motors and sensors are assigned to which inputs, and then write your code accordingly. So if we look at this lesson here, I have an image of some code. You can see motor 1 and motor 2 are being referenced here, but again, depending on which inputs your motors are on will determine what your code might look like. You might have to say motor 3 and motor 4. Again, depending on which inputs your motors and your sensors were assigned to.